Aboriginal people out. Okay. So, so then there's this American truth, and that is that when those people came, when those Europeans came to claim a land that was already home to other people, they also kidnapped and brought young people to work and build that country that Henry Ford said that he didn't need any help. Well, the people that you see in this picture here and others that were brought from Africa against their will were working to build the United States, and were not paid and were treated, were kept enslaved and oppressed. So I'm going to move past this quickly because we want to kind of get as much done as we can as quickly as we can. So all of those things in the 20th century, which was the 1900s for us, looked like this. This is what from 1600 to 1900, it became a place where people were segregated. They were put into areas that made people, kept people away from each other. Laws were enforced. And so that's some of the things that we're talking about today is segregation, what that means, which is taking people away from each other because of their culture. But how does that affect us as human beings, all of us as Americans? So this is really interesting to look at. This is, on a map down at the bottom that shows you how many miles it is to something. This is called a residential security map from 1937. And it shows you the green areas. If you look at the map over here, happens to be Los Angeles. So in the green areas is where the white people lived. The second grade would be in blue would be what they call blue collar workers. So that'd be people like plumbers, electricians, people maybe that owned a grocery store or something like that. And it went down. Jewish people might be in the yellow area. That's the third grade there. Whoops. The third area. And then African Americans were to only be in the areas that had red and not to come into the other areas. And it was strictly enforced. So that was segregation. And now we're going to talk a little bit more about that. I want to hear from you. But when we look at what it means to take people apart from each other so that they don't know each other, when you have a relationship, like we met each other over Zoom here, we all now, Rabbi Judy, who just joined us here, Brian, Sandra, and all of us, we have a relationship now. We know each other. But if you segregate people, if you keep people apart, they can never understand each other. They can never have relationships. So, do you all have any questions or any kind of thoughts about that right now, about what it means to keep people apart from each other?
Yeah, has there been any experiences in your life or know any of this at all that you could expound on? And if not, we can just keep going, but maybe you have experience or just firsthand knowledge if anybody's gone through that or if you've gone through that or not.
Not really, not for me. Not for me anyways.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not really that surprised by it because I mean, that particular thing I think has happened. It doesn't really happen that much anymore. It's still happening, but it's way, way more subtle. But I think that sort of map style there was probably, it had been happening for like over half a millennia. So yeah,
right.
Not really much new. And that department, when you look at all that stuff about the segregation and stuff like that. So yeah.
Right.
I grew up in San Francisco, right in the city, and I remember they used to say it's a very cosmopolitan city. There were, it was like a melting pot there. And even though there were different neighborhoods, what happened when we went to school was it pulled from all the neighborhoods. So I had a whole cross section of kids in my school always growing up, um, Asian, Black, Hispanic, white, Jewish. It was sort of like everything, and that's how I grew up. And it was really, I, in hindsight, I feel really fortunate.
You
I don't
were
think,
Yeah.
very fortunate. That was, that's the way that we would hope we all really
yeah,
could grow up. But for example, the American Indians are still segregated to um, to reservations, which means yes, they can get off of them. They're not by law there, but that's what they were given when they were moved off of their lands, which was all of the lands in what is now North America. And so they live in little areas. They're cut off. How many Native Americans do you know? They're
Mhm.
cut off, they're segregated. So we don't have, I happen to have been born in New Mexico, so you kind of run into them and have that culture, but it's very, very segregated. So we don't get to, even though they're the original Americans, we don't come into contact with them. So
Mhm.
like we just said, back a ways, the way that you build wealth in America and in any place, but we're going to talk about America at this point, is that you get land or you get property. So after the Second World War, this is another sort of ugly American truth. There was a thing called the GI Bill, which was stands for government issue, but it was really soldiers and American soldiers that were in the Second World War and the Korean War. They were given very low interest rates, sometimes no money down. They could buy houses and then they could start to build their wealth, because you know how it works. You buy a small house, you fix that up, you buy a bigger house, you get to either keep some money or you get a bigger house, and that builds your wealth. Well, what happened was African American GIs who fought alongside white GIs, soldiers, to defend the country they were put in those red sections and they were not given the opportunity to use that to build their wealth. So at that point, they couldn't keep up because of what we call systemic racism. It was built into the system that they could not do that. So in many ways that the white Americans moved up, then that wasn't shared. So we're kind of into the present time, and we're talking about that thing, systemic racism, which means it's embedded in the system. It's there. You can't get around it. It's like the cards are all set up for white people to be the first ones that are able to succeed, and people of color are not, and in many cases cultures other than just white American Protestants. What's happening now, and you might have heard of this, is something that the 15th Amendment to the Constitution says we can't do, which is suppress the votes of people. Everyone should be able to vote, but it's now, laws are being passed right now in Georgia and in Texas to make it hard for people of color to vote. So it's hard for me to believe that that's happening now. Have any of you heard of that? Savannah or LJ or
Ashley's here now. Hi, Ashley.
Ashley? Hi, Ashley. Have you heard that that's going on?
I have heard about it.
Mhm. LJ, have you had it at all?
About the vote suppression?
Voter suppression, yeah.
Oh, it wasn't even open. Okay. I know.
Hey, everybody.
Hi.
Yeah, that's my mom. So yeah, I've heard of the voting suppression. It actually, what was it? Woman just got the right to vote, what, like less than a decade ago, right? Was it less
No,
than
1919. But this
Oh,
is
oh,
right.
less than a century.
But maybe even today, like voter suppression, whatever. People are feeling like voters have been suppressed in the last.
Oh yeah, a lot of people are feeling like that. Yeah. So probably
Yeah.
recently, I'm not sure if it was true or not, because I mean, I don't like getting into politics and all that, whatever. But
Yeah.
there's way too much corruption and crap going on there. But yeah, I did hear about some people saying that some of the voting stuff was rigged or whatever. But
Yeah.
So you're going to be able to vote in what, 5 years?
No, I'm 15, 3 years.
Oh my gosh, in 3 years you'll be able to
3
vote.
years. Yeah.
So that's your say. What you say has carries the same weight as everybody, as President Biden, as anybody, that the governor of your state, everybody who's an American citizen is allowed to vote. So the question is, what do you think about the fact of that in the 15th Amendment that was back in 1887 says, hey, everybody gets the right to vote and you should be able to vote easily. And so now we have some states that are, and some folks that are saying, we don't believe that. We don't believe everybody has the right to vote. We believe some people have more rights than others. And so we're going to make it harder for people that are poor or people that have to work late, those kind of things. We're going to make it harder for them. So does that surprise you that that's happening in the United States?
No, I feel like to the rest of the world, maybe, because a lot of people in the world see this place like this perfect country or whatever sort of thing. I mean, maybe compared to the country that they're in then, like maybe people that live in like North Korea may think that, because with all their strict laws, but
Right.
to most of the world, they see us like a perfect country. But I mean, our country has the same type of problems, a lot of the same type of problems as other countries. So it's like, it doesn't really surprise me that much. But yeah, one of the things that I did see, that I noticed when Kamala Harris became vice president, I didn't see voter suppression, because I mean, I know that was a thing because that's happened before. But what is it called? Was it voter oppression or whatever? Or was it unfair vote? Because that was like, it's crazy to me that we've had 44 presidents and this is the first time that a woman is ever in like the seat of
A vice president, correct?
Yeah.
That's right.
And not even president, just vice president. The fact that a woman is, this is the first time a woman's ever been inside a presidential seat in the 44, what has it been, like 4 centuries?
Well, since 17. Yes, not
Since the
17,
founding of the
76.
Something.
But
Yeah.
also, but also what's crazy, there's never been somebody Jewish either.
There you go.
Never
Uh-huh.
been a Jew in office.
There you
Who
go.
is Jewish?
She is she's a commodity because she has all these different, racial and ties and
Really?
religious ties. Yeah, she's married
Well, that's cool.
somebody Jewish. Yeah. And yeah, first woman, just like, it's very cool.
Mhm.
I don't think she's Jewish, but I just think that it's an interesting thing that Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with you.
I mean,
Yeah.
they weren't even, it wasn't even that long ago when they wouldn't even, until Kennedy came along, he wouldn't even allow a Catholic.
Really?
Right. Yeah, Kennedy
Yeah.
was the first Catholic.
He was for the first Catholic, so it goes across the line of whether you're Jewish or Black or Catholic, or it even goes beyond religion. It's the country has been sort of stagnant in that area until just very recently.
Well, I just remember being so proud when Obama became the president, and precedent he set. It was so exciting to me.
Very.
Yeah.
He broke the glass.
So are you guys looking forward to voting or
Yeah,
Samantha?
I wanted Savannah.
Why do I say it? I'm so sorry. I know it's Savannah and I apologize.
People do that.
I'm sorry.
wanted
And
to-
I
wanted
love
to
the name
chime-
Savannah. I love that name. I don't know why I'm doing
I
it.
wanted to chime in about the voting that you've read about. Everything you've shown is so interesting. Two things. The separation, I'll be quick. The separation you talked about, and you talked about the Indians are cut off, and it's so true, and being separated from families, and then bringing it current with the immigration laws that were in place just not too long ago, and maybe still are, where there were families, children, and mothers separated from each children's and parents and siblings and families separated from each other, where there are still, I believe, hundreds of Hispanic children and that are not with their families today, right now in 2021. So right now, as each of us go to sleep in our beautiful beds and our comfortable homes, there are kids right now who may never see their parent again because they were separated. And no matter what the situation is, that's a painful experience and a traumatic experience for anyone. And so that's something that's happened presently, as well as when you talk about voter suppression, that should be very concerning. We hear it and we can say, oh yeah, well, it's, hey, yeah, I'm not surprised, but we should be concerned. Everybody should be concerned because as Christy was saying, it was written, hey, everybody holds the same value. It's a voice of people in the world that are affected by leaders. And so to suppress anyone's right to vote, anybody's, is I can give an opinion and say, I think it's horrible. And I just think as young people, whatever you decide, however you feel, let that sit with you and really think about what that cost is, what that really is saying in today's world, 2021, that we would create policy that prevents, people from voting and speaking their voice. There should be no circumstance where we want to be that kind of a country, and the vision was not to be that way, not with the words that were spoken,
That's right.
So I just wanted to share that.
That's absolutely right. And as young people that are going to vote in 3 years or 4 years, you will be in the group, you will be in that voice. You will have a voice that's as important as mine, as important as anyone that's sitting here right now that's over the age of 18, and Biden, and whoever you can think of, that's your favorite movie star. Everybody has an equal voice who's an American citizen. So these are just, we're talking about these truths that sometimes when we think about the American dream, we don't think these are the things that could make the American dream happen. But part of it is that we have to face and fix and work on the things that are not the way we want it. So just like Ty just said, America is constantly influencing the rest of the world. It's hard to imagine. Here we have little children in cages on our borders. But for a long time, we had things called Jim Crow laws, to go the wrong way. And so America was looked at by evil people, and those evil people looked at the way that the genocide had happened to the American Indians and also to Jim Crow laws. And Jim Crow laws were laws that were written by states that said that people were segregated and they could only, Black people had to eat at a certain place. They couldn't eat in the same restaurant. They couldn't sleep in the same hotel. And that went from the 1880s to the 1960s. And look what happened. We've talked about this, Black Wall Street that's been in the news. The Tulsa Massacre happened in 1921. And look who was watching. Look who was watching. Adolf Hitler and his group was watching. And so they decided to put Jewish people into ghettos and to commit genocide from looking at the United States. So that's extremely disturbing. It was something that we learned as a group together. And so that was for evil, but guess what? We can also lead good for good. And so that's where we need to be now, as being leaders for saying, no, there's not going to be any voter suppression. Yes, we're going to get all the kids back to their families. This is a priority. Yes, people are going to have health care. And yes, we're going to make what's called reparations to people that we need to make sure that African Americans and the Jewish culture and all of that are told that we recognize that mistakes were made and we're not going to do that anymore. So I just want to ask, do any of you guys believe in the power of saying I'm sorry? Have you had a good experience, or what kind of experience have you had if you just at some point just somebody did you wrong, or you didn't understand, or you just said I'm sorry? You took the initiative and said that. Have any of you ever had an experience with that?
My dad just said, I'm sorry without actions is not really I'm sorry. To most people. For me, it's actually been like a big learning experience because I mean, it's just me as a person that I had to learn, but it's also that I guess most younger siblings also struggle with this too. That, you know, you break your older sibling stuff, you do all this stuff to different people, but most of the time it was to like my older sibling when I was younger, because I mean, I didn't really leave the house that much, so most of them older sibling, my sister. And so I had to learn that even if you say I'm sorry, if you break it like 5 more times, then that means that you're obviously not sorry for it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's more of like a behavior thing with it.
Yeah, you
Right.
automatically say you're sorry, but then yeah, if you don't learn the lesson of before, when you do say you're sorry, then it's kind of like, okay, well, what's the point, right? Yeah, I mean,
Okay. It's
go ahead.
interesting that every year there's a time called the High Holidays, and this is one of the foundational parts of Judaism. There's something called teshuvah, but teshuvah is forgiveness or repairing the mistakes that you made, because the holiday is really celebrating our humanness. We're going to make mistakes. Do we get second chances? Is there forgiveness? And one of the things about teshuvah is that you must feel regret and you must do something to fix it. Like, it must be accompanied by positive action. Otherwise, the words don't mean anything. And I've always thought that was so interesting, because there's a lot of ways to make amends, even if somebody has passed away. You know, if let's say you hurt somebody, you know, you could go to their family, or you could do something to make up for what you did. But that's something that I think you're right, we have to learn. And these reparations, now, they were bad things. I mean, the Japanese internment camps were like concentration camps and, you know, a massacre. How do you ever make amends? They did it with money. And that's, you know, kind of a, like, how do you make up for life, except it was something, you know, it was something that for them to promise that they would never do it again, and monuments. And so it's something, I don't really know how you make up for a life, but you know, the reparations, you know, at least something was done. And I think that's something we can learn from each other.
Ashley, were you raising your hand?
Yeah, and it's not important anymore. It's fine.
Really? Okay.
It's definitely important. It's important if it's on your mind. We welcome you to share it. You know,
Yeah,
even if it's something that was prior, it's okay.
Be just inquisitive
Okay.
about it.
Well, it was more like my experience with like apologies and stuff.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
I feel like a lot of time, like sometimes when something happens with a friend or something, and well, this happened recently, and while I was saying like how I felt, they said they're sorry, but I was continuing to say like how I felt, and they said like, are you still mad, are we friends again? Like they kind of rushed to see, like, come to a conclusion, be like yeah or no, and less like how do you actually feel, and like are you okay.
That's
a big
so
deal.
important. That's such an important point you bring up. Because yeah, just like Judy said, Rabbi Judy said, is that when you just give money, or you just rush and say, okay, that's now, we're done, that's all fixed, that's not really a true apology, is it?
There has to be a lot more thought. There has to be a lot more thought behind the apology, which is kind of where this kind of ties into the whole reparations thing. Because if you just say, in the past, has always been like when we talk about the United States and kind of what is in the past, and people say, well, you know, we've offered our apologies to what happened in the past, and okay, that's fine, but there has to be more than that, because you're going to be apologizing for the rest of your life, but you're not really connecting to the problem, which is more of a systemic issue, or just a part of a whole longer conversation and, you know, reconciliation towards the people that have been oppressed, or people that have gone through those things. And that's similar to, it's similar to what you're saying, Ashley, is that's what that is. Okay, somebody apologizes, but there isn't really anything kind of behind it if they haven't learned from it, or if they don't really put their all into reconciliation of the issue. And that's kind of what we're talking about here with reparations.
So one thing that my dad just told me, he told me that what's the holiday called? It's the holiday celebrated on the Saturday of October.
Yom Kippur.
Okay, yeah. Oh, the last Saturday. So yeah, so in October there's this thing called the last Saturday, and it's the National Forgiveness Day. But
It's a different holiday. Yes.
yeah. But my dad just told me that it's a National Forgiveness Day, but it's actually not celebrated, and it's not really respected much, because it's not really respected much, and it's not really given much attention. It's like a forgotten holiday. Same with July 7th is a global forgiveness day, but literally no one talks about it. I didn't even know it was a thing. So no schools talk about it or anything like that. And so he was basically saying, like, why don't we make more of a big deal out of it? You know, it's like, because people find it hard to forgive other people because of like actions and intents and how they feel on the inside, because they have some type of grudge or something that still is not settled within them. And if everyone was so easy to forgive like that, then there really would be no war or anything like that, or murder or whatever. So yeah.
And that's true, but doesn't it make it easier, or a straighter path, if people who did, or somebody in your family or your country says, I'm sorry? I recognize that there were things that were done that were wrong, and that there's still a system in place that does not serve people of color. So when or cultures, that says we're still doing that. So we want to be forgiven, but we also want to make it actionable. We're always saying we're going to do better, and the ways we're going to do better are, for example, here's a picture of the chancellor, this woman here, the chancellor of Germany, in Jerusalem, looking at the pictures of the people who were killed in the Holocaust and saying, I see this. I see that my country was involved in this, and we're going to make sure that we give money, but that we give recognition, and that this never happens again. So that's yes.
Yeah. It's like, it's that too, but it's also like an issue of trust.
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's like, if you don't trust a person, then it's like, what is there to forgive? Because you may be more inclined to forgive like a friend or like a close family member, as you were saying, than someone that you don't know. So it's mostly just trust. That's the problem.
I agree. Go ahead.
Well, I think there's two things that I want to say. One is, yeah, there's two people involved in the experience. I mean, especially what Ashley was saying is that you have to give the other person time. Also, it's not an immediate thing,
Right.
and clearly, whoever you're saying you're sorry to, you need to also know they may not be able to do it yet. But that also, it's a responsibility. There's kind of like a hidden law in Teshuvah, which I didn't mention, that if the person does say, I'm sorry 3 times, you are absolved. You have to go back 3 times. And I think that's really interesting, because we certainly need time to think about it. And the other thing that about the Holocaust is I went to Germany for that very reason, to see in Germany, every single place where something horrible happened, they have a monument. So you're walking around Germany and it will say 5,000 people were killed here, or there's a bloody massacre. They marked everywhere. So there was never a question of like hiding anything, which I was shocked. And when I went to Spain, it was very different, because I didn't do these in the same summer, but Spain erased anything that ever happened. In 1492, we all know that was a big year for the voyagers, for the help me somebody.
Conquistadors,
the explorers, right?
Explorers, right.
That was also a year that there was a huge Jewish massacre there, and Jews were not, if you stayed Jewish, it was either die or convert. And a lot of them did, but kind of hid their Jewishness. They were called Marranos. But Spain.
That was the Inquisition.
Right.
Spanish, right.
And so but when I went to Spain and I went to the museums, there's nothing. It's as if they never existed.
Wow.
And that's the difference. I think that it's very hard to forgive Germany and the Holocaust. However, when you see this that's where the trust comes in, that there is nothing being hidden. Eventually, you don't forget, you forgive, because you have to move on.
Right. That's
I mean, what if we did that with the American Indians? I think, like, wow.
Yeah, right. Yes. Yeah.
Or with this, or any part in history, or
they are doing. That's what the other Brian Stevenson in Equal Justice Initiative in Mississippi. Everywhere that they know that there was a lynching or that sort of thing, they put up everything they know about it. Yeah, and I think that, like you're saying, that builds that trust. It's also like human beings, American human beings did this. it's beyond any of us to imagine that we could do that, but obviously people do that. So it's a way of saying, I don't want to do that. I don't want, I never want to go there. I never want to be in a situation where that would ever be a possibility again. I want to stand on the right side. So that like you're saying, that makes you say, I don't want to ever be in that. I don't want to be on a monument like that. It gives you a real three-dimensional kind of in your face choice at that time.
Well, I think to Judy's point too. I mean, with the whole thing with Germany, because when my mother lived there, she lived there for 13 years, and we spoke to a lot of Germans whenever I would visit. And the one thing that I know in following them, which I wish we could have, meaning this country, could have acknowledged that sooner than what they went through. But they were from the very beginning, they held themselves accountable. They had trials, of the people that were conspired to do all these things with the Hitler and his group. And and so you kind of held them accountable, and you kind of knew. And Germany was very, very serious about getting themselves back to a point where they would be an acceptable country. They went through a number of years, obviously, of going through all that, but ultimately they're, to even now, they're almost, I wouldn't say like the first country or the only country, but they are very welcoming in terms of bringing in other refugees. There's a lot of people that are coming through there right now that are from different countries. Do they have issues? Yes. But I mean, but still, they have allowed themselves to be that way. I think because they acknowledged the fact that they, from the very beginning, when they went through that whole thing with the Holocaust, that was a problem. They really wanted to revitalize their image of not being that country. And I think that they went through a lot of trials and tribulations, but for the most part, they're trying to do what they could. And this country, is hopefully on that path as well to be more sensitive towards reparations and looking into that for not just Black people, but from other people as well.
Yeah, it's hope. It's hope that you can change. It's hope that you can do better. And so we look at some of these things that we call reparations that we're getting into now. Let's see if I can get there. So this is
reparations for African Americans.
Okay, wait, hang on a second. This thing starts as soon as I go there. So that's what we've been talking about. So who do we still have on here? I only see LJ here.
Miss Christie.
We're all here.
Everybody's here. Okay.
Miss
So
Christie?
yes.
If you don't want to use the screen for it, I believe you can use the arrow keys on your bottom right of your keyboard to go left and right. So then you don't have
Okay, I'll try that. I did that at first and it went all the way to the end, but I appreciate it. It might work. So so back in many years ago, that people have had to choose all the way what side of history you want to be on, right? So there used to be suffragists that marched for women to be able to get the vote. There were abolitionists that back in the 17 and 1800s who wanted to put an end to slavery, and that's what they spent their life doing. And they spent their money and their time, and they wrote about it. They were called abolitionists. And now we have an opportunity, particularly as white people, we have an opportunity to be reparationists, which means that we say, yes, we want to make sure that reparations are built into our system, to dismantle what has been there, and that it is ongoing, putting back into place for the people who built the country in labor. Like you may have heard Michelle Obama talk about that enslaved people built the White House, right? So the White House was built by enslaved people who were not paid for their labor. So that's one of the things, reparations. Anyway, so I'm gonna put this on now because it explains it really well. It's about a 3-minute explanation.
Reparations for African Americans have been in the news a lot lately, which may leave you wondering, why are reparations necessary and what would they look like? After 400 years, we thought you'd never ask. You probably know at least a little bit about the horrors of chattel slavery that lasted about 250 years in this country. What's not as talked about is that 250 years of free labor from the millions of people who worked their entire lives under slavery is precisely what laid the foundation for the American economy to become the powerhouse it is today. After the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, most of the African Americans who had been enslaved found themselves suddenly free, but with no resources or land to make a life for themselves. What's worse is that these folks were promised those resources, but the order for the 40 acres and a mule that was promised by Union General Sherman was later reversed under President Andrew Johnson. And sadly, the only folks who did receive reparations were the former owners of enslaved people to compensate for their lost property. With white Americans controlling nearly all of the land and money, and African Americans controlling almost none of it, a huge racial wealth gap was created. Sound familiar? That's because that racial wealth gap is still very much with us today. Instead of taking steps needed to correct this gap, American policy has largely made it worse, meaning white Americans went on to become some of the wealthiest people on earth, as African Americans face new form of discrimination with every passing decade. Some of these injustices include the seizure and destruction of Black businesses and property, the exclusion of Black people from obtaining mortgages, the exclusion of Black workers from unions and job opportunities, exclusion of Black students from institutions of higher learning, systemic underfunding of services in Black communities, racially based mass incarceration, disenfranchisement, as well as the daily wear and tear of police violence, abysmal public health indicators, and microaggressions. The list is infinite, and we as a nation have never apologized or provided restitution for any of it, hence the need for reparations, both monetary and symbolic. But reparations are complicated, you may be saying. How would they actually work? We agree that there's a lot to figure out, but there are several promising factors that indicate that reparations are indeed possible for African Americans. One is that reparations have been paid in many countries before, including the United States, where reparations were paid to victims of Japanese American internment camps under the Reagan administration. Another reason is that there are many Black scholars in this country who have studied reparations and could guide us through the process. One such group is the National African American Reparations Commission, who have created a 10-point plan outlining exactly what forms reparations could take. After 400 years, our generation has the chance to seize the opportunity that our ancestors never would, to formally apologize for our past, to pay reparations, and to finally actualize the racial healing that our country and each one of us so desperately needs. Learn more about how you can become a reparationist today at fundforreparationsnow.org.
Okay, so that wraps it up so nicely. It's the best film I've seen on it. And so here's just some of the 10-point reparation plans. But what are your thoughts about this? I'd love to hear. Yeah, I'd love to go ahead.
I'm shocked that the slave owners got their, like, I think reparations, right, for lost property.
Correct. They
That
got their land back. They got their land and their plantations back.
that
And
that shocks me, and it makes me really mad, because knowing that they got that back and we haven't done anything for African Americans is just horrible.
Yeah. Thank you, Simone.
Yeah, how could that even, how did that even happen? It's just so unlawful, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
unmute.
Yeah.
But
I knew I was gonna say hi, y'all.
Hi.
Sorry, I was
hello.
getting
Glad
dinner
you're
ready and all that
there.
good stuff. Oh, thank you. One of the things, this is so powerful. I've never seen this reparations plan before. This is pretty cool. And not only that, but I know you all probably saw on CNN, and it was all over the news about the 100-year anniversary when they burned down Tulsa,
Mhm.
Black Wall Street there. And that, I mean, honestly, all of these reparations could feed into that if they could restore, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Even that community where people live, people opening more doors and opportunities for African Americans to flourish in the areas that were affected so tragically. People lost lives. I'm just so glad that they're, vigorously trying to resolve what happened, find the bodies, all of that. But this is exactly what we need. I don't think anybody at this point is wanting a payout, like a monetary quote unquote reparation. I think the way that this is stated in these top 10, this is way more than just cash in your hand. This is
Right.
longevity.
It's building that infrastructure. It's building.
Right.
It's systemic.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm. Well
And
said.
it's dismantling that unfair, like when we're talking about all of those people's wealth that
Yeah.
got their land back was worked by people that were brought here against their will and then not paid wages. If you look
Right.
at it, and if you look at, well, what's fair about that? Then you pay the people that were not able to build their wealth through this. You fix that, and that's what this does. That's what it
Yeah.
looks at. It looks at the systemic part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's
And
great.
it's such
That's
a
an
long
awesome video.
process. Oh, go ahead, Andrew.
No, that was just an awesome video. Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
It was very good. Thank you, Chrissy, too. I hadn't seen this before this either. And that's the beauty of this whole session, this whole process, this whole series, is that we keep saying that we are learning, everybody's learning here, and it's just really incredible for that. When I hear this and think about reparations and the different things that they can do to, make things right, it's such a long process. It's going to be a long process, and it's not an overnight easy thing at all, because at the same time, you still have the resistance. And hopefully they don't have the power, but you have the resistance of what we just talked about prior to this, which was voter suppression. All of that will have an effect and impact the possibility of reparations at any point. So when there's any leader who comes into play, and if they want to say, hey, no more of this or that, then that possibility is there as well. So it's just so important to stay engaged and stay informed yourself, and critically look at everything, and try your best to look at things with a wide scope as you look at it. The other thing I'll quickly say is this: hearing everything else, I thought, Chrissy, I think you said, yeah, slavery, they built the buildings and the infrastructure and the agriculture, all the things that people of color who were enslaved did. And I wanted to ask, and it could be rhetorical unless you want to answer, but how does that understanding impact the stereotypes that you may have in your mind? For example, a stereotype, oh, Black people are lazy, and and that's a generalized stereotype, or other stereotypes that come with it. How does seeing that a system has caused a lot of the positions that people of color are in, it's not just a choice. It's not just because they didn't work hard. It's not just those things. A system was created to keep them in that posture, and yet they're called lazy, or they don't want to work, or they don't deserve this or that. I just wonder how this information impacts your thinking of stereotypes, and hopefully it challenges them. That's really what I want to say.
I had to work twice.
I love that question, because I think that that same thing of separating us, making sure we don't talk to each other like we're talking now. and actually having a relationship and saying, yeah, this is not true. This is systemic. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I was gonna say too, Ty, when you were talking about that, it so, rubs me the wrong way when someone says, or even refers to our, someone in our race as lazy. It's like I know for a fact, I feel like we've always had to work twice as hard. You know what I mean? To get where we are, to do what we do. It's like automatically, and this might be good for some of the kids to know, automatically when you walk in a room, people see the color of your skin. They don't look at automatically your character or even your abilities or your talents. The first thing they see is your skin color. And from the jump, you have to therefore then prove yourself, and I know for me, it's a little bit probably even more home for me because I grew up in Arizona where I was the only Black child in my class all the way through elementary school. So I always felt like I had to, hold my shoulders up, lift my head up and be more than. And thank God for my Black church that kind of kept me grounded, and my parents and my family. But yeah, I just think this would be amazing, and it would be a long process, but gosh, I feel like we've already made so many strides already. I mean, to see everybody, to see multiple races marching against George Floyd, and I feel like as a country, we've already made a turn, and it's just a matter of building upon that. You know what I mean? Because it's huge. And once we realize we're all together, we'll accomplish so much more.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Absolutely.
That's right. And in fact, this HR 40 bill is in the House. So you can call your congressman, and woman in person and say, this needs to go through. So it is in front of them right now, which is a reparation proposal.
Yeah, I know Tulsa. I think Tulsa is. Yeah, is that the one you're talking about? Is that the bill for Tulsa?
This is a national one. Tulsa actually,
I know they do too.
President Biden called for reparations for that, but the city of Tulsa is paying reparations to, I know the survivors, they're like 106 or 107 years old.
Yeah.
Wow.
They've already paid out to, I think, the 3 survivors that are still left.
Right.
They paid them, but they're also studying how they can do this on a systemic level, on a business level. So between them and I think Illinois, I think is also doing reparations. I'm not really quite sure like specifically what they're trying to do, but they've already announced that they're trying to do that. And I think whoever said that on here, that it's not so much that you want to look to get the money aspect of it, but just the systemic part of it is huge. That's kind of where I think everything is going, and that's because people are understanding the realities of what has gone on in the country in a lot of different ways. Whether that's again, whether we're talking about Black folks or Jewish folks, it's the realities are kind of coming out now, and hopefully there'll be a more of an understanding atmosphere between a lot of different cultures because of that.
And how do we do that? We make sure that everyone can vote.
Yeah.
We make sure that everyone can vote. And so when you hear of these things where, oh, we're just going to do this, well, we're not going to let them drop out. We're not going to keep this open over here so that you can drop off your ballots. All that is voter suppression. All that means is it makes it harder for people to vote. And so we have to, yes, go ahead.
And I think a problem also, were you saying for me to go ahead?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I think a problem also is that people are only getting like news or like what they're only learning about it from, let's say, like one source, and and that source might be telling them like other information, try to like make up kind of things about how like the voter suppression, like why it's happening. It's not actually voter suppression, when they should be looking at like from many sources and many other people, and looking from like all different sides and points of views on like what is this bill and what are these laws actually doing?
Yes.
Mhm. Excellent point. Yeah.
I think it's really surprising to me that that bill was made so recently. And I also
Yeah,
think
right.
it's surprising to me that I've never heard about it until now. So, I mean, I would think that'd be on the news or something, but I mean, we didn't even know about it, and we watch the news like every now and then, like on a weekly basis, maybe like.
Well, it's hard. It's hard to follow everything and you're busy
No,
with
but
your
they should
lives.
have had this on right after all of what they've done with the Tulsa massacre. There was so much information out. This is what should trail it,
Yeah. Yep.
This is what we should have right after we've watched the movie. This is what
Right.
Yes, yes.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So the reparations, he is moving forward with that. That the president said in his speech on the 1st that they are moving forward with some, but nationally it has to be passed. And of course, then there's your Bruce's Beach, close to where you are and it's in Manhattan Beach, I believe, and they are actively giving that land back to the descendants of the Bruce family. So that's it's progress,
That
and
is so awesome. Where is Manhattan Beach? Is that up north?
So yeah, LJ, that's a little bit north of Los Angeles.
South.
It's like a beach community. I'm sorry, south of Los. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, south of LA. It's a beach community, and a really interesting story. I'll say real quick. I'm an avid cyclist, and I was cycling with a bunch of friends, and we used to always go that way all the time. I passed by that park all the time. Didn't know what it was. It was just a regular park.
Mhm.
Didn't know the history. And then one day I'm riding my bike and with a bunch of friends, and we see a whole bunch of people at this park. And I'm like, well, what's going on here? It's like, this is what's happening. And literally they were doing a ceremony for the descendants of that park. Yeah. And I just stood there in disbelief because I could not, as many times I've gone by there, I never knew the history of that whole thing. And the fact that they were doing this just then and there, that was my first introduction to the history of that park. And now, that was when I saw that whole thing happening. It was around 2007 or 8. And now, 12, 13 years later, they're finally passing a, bill to where, that will go back to the descendants of that family.
Wow.
It's amazing. It's amazing. It's at least moving forward to some extent.
That's
But
awesome.
I say this so that there's so many other areas, probably, I mean, obviously in this country, there's so many areas of Black history and Jewish history that we don't even know about,
Mhm.
And I think it's important that those things slowly but surely they're happening, but it needs to be even more so, because then I think a lot of people will have, a lot of different cultures, and people in this country have a better understanding of a culture and have more respect of that culture, as opposed to you just, learning from various sources here and there. There's got to be that kind of alliance towards a particular culture that understands what this country was made of. It wasn't just all, I hate to say this, but white people. It was Jewish people, it was Black people, it was Hispanic people, it was everybody. That's what this country's about.
That's right.
But there are certain things that people that the powers that be basically are trying to hide. And I think that's what this what we're doing right now is trying to unearth all that for us to have an understanding of each other and of other cultures.
That's right.
And the good thing too about this whole thing we're doing is it's just about bringing up the history that is there. It is not us putting anything on it or making things, up or anything. It's literally the history that, like you're saying, that we're uncovering and bringing to the forefront.
And that's this great comic, the illustration that that Rabbi Judy sent to us, which is how deep racism goes. You see let's just take down the Confederate monument, but in one of the monuments they took down that I was so happy was John C. Calhoun. I don't know if you know, over in what's the park over there in
Charleston? Charleston?
in Charleston? Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, I hated that thing so much. It was like, but in, on that same street, Calhoun Street was where the Mother Emanuel murders happened. So that metaphorically in every other way shows how deep it is, and it goes back centuries. But
Yeah. One thing is that that's why I really enjoy this, because I feel like I'm getting more cultured in like a lot of the stuff that I didn't know about and that normally people would not tell us to protect us, I guess, from our feelings or whatever. But I think one of the things that I really didn't know growing up in like a in like a majority Caucasian school with probably like 3 Black people in like my grade. So, and probably only like 20 Black people throughout the whole school out of the like 300 people that were there.
wow.
And so I think one of the things that I really enjoyed about going to middle school was getting cultured and stuff, but I feel like I've sort of missed a lot of stuff that I should have gotten. Like one time we went to the Battery back in like when I was like 7th or 8th grade, like beginning 8th grade, end of 7th grade sort of thing. Went to the Battery as a family, and there was this monument there. It was right off the shore. So you drive to the back street and then it's right off the shore. And then there's like this monument right across the street from it. And I was like, oh, that's cool. That's like a piece of history. I want to take a picture by it. And my parents kept telling me no. And I was like, why? And so when I went over to it, and as I started taking a picture of it, my dad was like, well, that's one of the statues that like commemorates like racism and all that other stuff. And I didn't even realize that I was sitting there trying to take a picture with it. So I had no idea.
And those are the things we just go by every day. You just drive by every day. And there's one close here that when the mayor of the city, it's a town called North Augusta, right on the what it says on that monument, the mayor had never read it. And he was so embarrassed because it was very, very racist. And it had been in the town for
Hundreds.
they're still going back and forth about it, but he was like, I can't even believe what that says, and I'm the mayor. So
Yeah,
that's the way that goes.
But I think that's part of systemic racism. You don't even notice it.
That's exactly right. Very deep.
And then when you think about it, it's embarrassing. It's not only embarrassing, it's just horrifying, that you haven't done anything about it. So
right. So it's hard to know, but this is an excellent illustration of that, because that's exactly where it is. It's embedded in the US. It's not about working hard. You can't work hard enough. We have to form relationships, and we have to look around and say, hey, we're all Americans. We're all in this together, and we all have to make it better for everyone. And that means sometimes that looks to people like, oh, well, we're giving something, or it's not true. This is reparations. It's repairing something that's broken and something that needs to be repaired.
Yeah.
So that's all I have to share. And because I'm working over here, I'm going to have to jump off, but I'm just so blessed to be able to
That was really great, Christy.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
So I feel like I learned a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I learn a lot every day. There's just so much, so many stories and so much. But the fact that we all get to talk to each other and I feel like I raced through this, but I think you've got a lot of vocabulary. It's the teacher in me that wants to get that vocabulary out there. So once you look out, you can see where it is. You can start to see, oh my gosh, there it is right in front of me, and not close your eyes. But I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Sunday. And
Yep.
Christine, it was wonderful.
well, thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you. This was great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm almost an extra Amber here for till Tuesday. So maybe we'll get to next time in town. I'll be able to drive down there and meet you.
No, yeah, you guys can
Yeah.
meet each other.
I'd love to.
Yeah, 'cause
That would be
Bob-
amazing.
Oh, who that?
Yeah,
Miss Christie.
absolutely.
Oh, okay. Hey, Miss Christie, where do you live?
I live in Austin, but I work here all the time. In
Okay.
Aiken, I'm in Aiken, and I work out of Aiken. So,
Okay.
but I do a lot of work down in Charleston and Beaufort, and so next
Yeah,
time
let
I
us know.
yeah, I sure will.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's awesome.
Okay, take care.
Thank you for,
Thank
thank
you.
you, Chrissy.
Bye.
And
Bye-bye.
thank you, Andrea and
This is
Ashley
good.
for joining. Oh, people left, okay.
Yeah, right. No,
Everybody-
well, you're still there, but but yeah,
Bye.
thank you.
Bye, LJ.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Ty, for arranging this.
See you next week. I mean, next month.
All right.
2 more classes left, you guys.
I know.
Savannah, you can use us if you want, Savannah.
Here we go with two more, right?
No, I think-
Who's up?
Oh,
Go ahead.
2
Go ahead.
more.
Go ahead, Sandra. Go ahead.
I was gonna just say we should pay attention. I feel similarly to Ashley, like, you read these things and it's shocking, and I feel like they're walking away now with this, I feel like in culmination, we should throw it to them. What do you think we can do? What do you think you can do? What can this group do? Maybe that's a finale thing later in the summer where we come together and do one small step together that helps start it.
Oh, it helps the cause, basically,
Well,
so
the
to speak.
last class, the last class, if we're going somewhat still to the one that was created originally, is kind of like that call to action from
Yeah.
what we had. So it's a perfect opportunity at the end to show this video. I know I have a video I could show, and then where we could talk and just kind of have that call to action on what to do. I think that's a good thing to leave them with.
And I also think we have to give them choices, like, because I was even thinking, I mean, what, do we all like write to the, do we all like, write into that 40th Amendment or the, whatever, the HR 40 bill, but I think we need to have some choices, and it could even be to help build another group around this, because we have a whole new group of 13-year-olds coming in who could
Oh, okay.
who might
Oh, good.
really,
Yeah.
who might really,
That's great.
yeah. And I think that they're a really smart group. And
Mhm.
parents would be really involved, because what's happened is some of the kids are having their bar mitzvahs and then they think they're done. And
Right.
so
Ashley and Simone are
of
key,
that group.
and they're in that group. And so they're like, to me, a transition couple. Like they would be really helpful in mentoring new kids.
Maybe they can be, like we mentioned before, we go to the next group, but then you have these guys that are ambassadors. They're maybe more of a guide or an assistant or something, to where they've already gone through this, so they can help the next group, to kind of learn or understand.
Yeah. And you know what? All of this stuff is so rich that the truth is, I'm sorry, my stupid computer. But all of the information is so rich that they really can.
Oops,
Whoa.
we lost.
Ty, can't hear you. He's got like a little, what's that thing on the right there? What's that mean?
I'm asking her to unmute. Let's see if that helps.
What are the next 2 classes anyway? That I know they're.
I'm a little worried because it's summer and everybody's got their schedules, and
That's what I think. Yeah,
and
right.
we were talking before you both came on that, I don't know if people are going crazy now
Well,
to leave, but we're supposed to, our next one is in July, on July 18th.
Mhm. Yeah, I would imagine that people, I mean, now I know we did send out to everybody to make sure that they were going to be on, but or that they were going to be there, but
Yeah.
I guess a couple of them, I guess, weren't able to make it.
Judy, you're muted.
Yeah, I spoke to 2 kids today who will be coming into the bar mitzvah class, and they don't have plans over the summer. And
Okay.
their parents are actually involved in, involved in these kinds of social justice.
No.
And I just feel like another group coming in might just give it another oomph. And I know, and they said their kids aren't going away this summer, which I thought was, they're looking for things that they can do. And I'm just wondering how we can keep the momentum up.
Well, okay, Drew, but now, okay, but this is kind of an interesting thing now, because now, okay, we've got, we, as of what, June 15th, it's all open now. So do we do a combination of Zoom or people getting together?
Well, that's a thought. What I would like to know too is, well, your nephew can't, or your cousin
I
can't.
know. Yeah, no, I understand. Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah.
But it depends also on what the next thing is we're going to do. And I also think that maybe we should think about something like either art or some kind of journaling, or I don't know, I'd love to have something tangible, because I'd like to talk about it at High Holidays. I mean, I really feel that it's a big thing, and I don't want us to lose the momentum. Ty, you were going to say something?
Yeah.
We can't hear.
No.
I don't know.
Did you? Where is she? She disappeared.
There she is. Can't hear you.
Ty, you there?
We see her, but we can't hear you.
I know, right?